Welcome back to the Accedo Playback Podcast, the podcast discussing industry news, trends, and tech advancements in the streaming and OTT industry. Today, joining us is Kirby Grines, founder and CEO of 4320, and Mrugesh Desai, Accedo's VP of North America. Kirby, good to have you on. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Neil.
And Mrugesh, it's good to see you back on. I think it's our quarterly episode with you.
Thanks, Neil. Episode number 14, and you're still going strong, so that's great to see.
I think this might even be 15, actually, but I'll double check.
I stand corrected. There we go.
No worries. Kirby, I know it's not really needed, but do you mind just giving us a bit of an introduction about yourself?
Yeah, sure thing. Kirby Grines. I'm founder of 4320, as you mentioned, Neil. We also, so what 4320 does, so essentially we're a content marketing agency. We work exclusively with the streaming video space, which is where I've been the last 15 plus years of my career. Also, we operate the Streaming Wars, which is industry publication meets media company, kind of recapping everything you need to know. And yeah, prior to that, I started an app development company in 2009, Float Left, and we were acquired in 2019.
Yeah, I was going to say congratulations on the launch of the Streaming Wars. I can imagine the amount of work that went in to get that up and running and to where it is now. Do you want to just, I guess, explain a little bit more about why you created it and what are the short-term goals?
Yeah, sure thing. There's a big evolution, and in that there's a long story. There's a longer story. I tend to tell long stories. I'll spare the audience and try to do this the quickest way I can. So when we started Float Left, like we were just internet guys. We built internet products. I worked a lot in e-commerce. So if I was attached to any industry, I guess it was e-commerce. But anybody that needed a website, I would build it. So we started this thing called Float Left Studios as a web agency. And then we really just kind of right place, right time. In retrospect, hooked up with these people at Roku. I think there were probably 8 people working at the company at the time. And they just launched the Roku player, which had just spun off of Netflix, who decided they don't want to do their own proprietary box. So they gave it to Roku. And a lot of the folks that were previously doing some product stuff at Netflix. And Roku was going to open that up to third parties. I think there were 5 apps on the platform, and we built the 6th. And we did that through a company we were working with at the time as a financial news company. And we went back to Roku kind of as Float Left and not this research company, and said, hey, by the way, we have this company. We build websites, but we'd love to do one of these Roku apps. Should anybody want one of those ever again? Like, having no clue. And also, what do you charge a service that doesn't exist? And so that's how we got into Roku. And then we decided, let's go all in on the streaming video stuff. Internet connected TVs seems to be pretty important, and let's just own in on it. And so we were in the media space now. Like I said, like I built a lot of internet stuff. Like I wasn't in the media entertainment industry, but I needed to know. I needed to know about what was going on to be working with the types of clients we were going to work. So I found myself every day just reading news, reading various trades. Like every day, I'd forget the names of some of these things that are like household names now to me: Variety, Hollywood Reporter, Deadline. Like as a new guy coming into this space, like I had an Excel sheet every morning. I would start just clicking each row, which had a new publication, and what I found myself doing, and guys, is I was just spending too much time reading news. Like I had this company to build of doing these things that nobody understood what was going on, internet and TV apps. And so what I did in 2009, I built I built a product that I'm still using. It's my little terminal, brings all this news from hundreds of different outlets, even if it goes finds new outlets. Essentially, if you're like writing content that this engine can pick up, it'll kind of suck it all in. And to this day, that's how I consume news. And so everything I've been doing, whether it's the newsletter started 5 years ago, or now this expanded version of a website, of the Streaming Wars, is kind of everybody else's look into the tool and the way I've consumed news the last 15 years. It's just like one place to go. And if it's original, obviously you're staying on the site, but we curate a lot of stuff too, because we can't write everything. There's a lot of great minds and people out there, people breaking stories, people riffing on things, why they matter. Like, we'll get you there. So you don't have to spend time consuming news across all these different places. Come here. We'll show you what's important. And we tend to typically focus more on kind of my background and what I find most valuable, which is business strategy, product marketing, user experience, and really trying to be that like hub to everything that's happening in this streaming space.
So it's funny you talk about how much news you're reading. I've also kind of run into that problem, but I've actually started. I've reverted. I'm going back to paper news the entire way. I'm getting sick of reading everything through digital, but it's good to hear. You touched a little bit there on UX and just your experience there. One thing that I've noticed recently, and Mrugesh, you can probably touch on this as well, but just are you seeing an interest in sort of standing up key user experiences around like sporting events or other sort of events like the Euros, Olympics, even probably the next big event like the Super Bowl? Do you think that more content providers or OTT applications are finding this as kind of a way to engage users more?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that on, and would love Kirby's thoughts on this as well. But firstly, I just wanted to acknowledge this is a bit of a milestone moment for the podcast. This is our first ex-competitor on the podcast, jokes aside, I think there's always been a very mutual respect with all of us, who in the early days were building out app experiences for OTT. I think Kirby will remember well, the lack of certification requirements, the low-powered devices, and just the people connection needed in order to get through these projects with the OEM providers and folks on the vendor side. We're all a dozen years deep into this journey, building out experiences on platforms like Roku and others. But just wanted to acknowledge, Kirby and the team at Float Left were pioneers in this space, along with ourselves. With respect to UX and including marquee sports experiences as part of that, obviously there's been well-established sports services that do this for a long period of time. But obviously, you're now seeing a trend with the major kind of entertainment services like a Prime Video, who are starting to acquire sports rights and are now needing to sort of fuse, what was essentially a deep focus on an entertainment user experience with now incorporating an engaging live sports experience. That's not going to happen overnight. There needs to be a lot of focus groups, experimentation with the user experience to just get the data on how to kind of blend content experiences across multiple verticals. I think it's sort of early days. Folks will get it right, but I think not without naming names, a lot of these experiences have just been kind of slapped on an entertainment experience and could do with a lot of nurture and care we like to talk about the feedback loop, the data-driven loop here at Accedo. But reacting real time to how users are leveraging these experiences and forking the user experience over time is the way forward for many of these experiences. That's at least my perspective. I'm not sure what Kirby thinks.
Yeah, I mean what you mentioned, Mrugesh, about kind of slapping these experiences together. It's something that we have to always kind of keep in our heads is these companies that are brand names, that are household names to us. Like I'll just mention some random ones like HBO, now obviously Warner Bros. Discovery, like all these companies we know and love, Starz, Showtime's now with Paramount, is these companies, like you don't have to go far back, and they were not direct to consumer. Like they are still those companies, maybe through acquisitions called something else, but they still operate those businesses. But everything else has completely changed. And there's a lot of just discipline and things that is entirely brand new, like product maturity and just things that just aren't in these companies' DNA, that they have to just spin up new businesses overnight with the same name. So even though the same logo's on there, like the whole business and everything is completely different. And I used to joke a long time ago. So I worked at a Subway in college, and I think when HBO was flirting with the idea of going direct to consumer, I made a comment that I've sold more customers than HBO ever had. It just speaks to like the whole economics has changed. And 4320 content marketing agency, but I actually started 4320 as an extension of Float Left. And basically what that was is I saw a lot of companies, a lot of big ones, that just weren't product mature, just because it wasn't because of the companies. It's just because where those companies were in this whole transition to streaming and potentially direct to consumer. Is I saw a lot of people build apps and the results weren't exactly what they were thinking. Like, people weren't staying as long as they hoped to. People weren't being subscribed like they thought they would. And I would hear that feedback every time I'd follow up with somebody and ask, hey, how's the app doing? It's like, functionally it does exactly what you asked, but just not kind of seeing the results we thought they would. And my background is user experience. Like, I've done a lot of things, but like, actually went to school for is user experience and visual design, interface design specifically. And I wanted to help, but we're running a company that builds the apps and kind of ships them off. We don't stick around and kind of A/B test and do all the fun, cool product stuff. And so I launched 40-20 with that idea to be a UX consultancy doing that. And for various reasons, all for good, I'd no longer do that. Through evolution and what market asked for, we've become a content marketing agency. But that's still what's missing a lot. I think just fundamentally from the way these businesses think. I did see, I don't remember when, but I loved when I saw it come across My Little Terminal that Accedo was doing a consulting practice on a lot of the things that I originally wanted 40-20 to be doing. And so I love where you guys heads out on a lot of stuff, because it's not just launching these things, slapping it together, but it's like maturing them over time.
Yeah, a lot of what you just said, resonates with me, and I think our journey at Accedo. So, like yourselves, we were certainly the guys who built apps, right? Which was actually a really great label to have, very clear what we do, and there was a lot of demand for that. But we've essentially evolved from the app designers and developers to be able to do that, plus do systems integration, and kind of the latest layer we've added is true managed services, right? So we don't want to be involved in just getting your app to market, getting your content service to market. We want to be involved in the entire life cycle, right? And a lot of people, may not realize this, but every 2 to 3 years, most OTT services are reconsidering their tech stack, right? They're 100%. Reconsidering their application frameworks. They're reconsidering their backend vendors for various reasons. So you're in this constant state of evolution. And to Kirby's point, even mature companies, mature organizations, they can have a product-centric thinking, but you cannot have a product-centric thinking across the entire tech stack. It's very, very difficult to do that. And you are in the game of producing content and monetizing. So that's really where you should spend all your efforts, whether it's engineering, whether it's business strategy. And it's, I think folks like us in the industry, Accedo and other partners who can step up and say, look, we can take a much more central role in running your technology and operations through that life cycle and continue to evolve you through the OEM updates, through the tech stack updates. So that's really how we've evolved. And I think, that's where the market is today. Everyone's got an app, right? But has everyone got the sophistication of being able to evolve the tech stack? Is everyone at a point where they're as data driven or aspire to be as data driven as a Netflix? I think those are the areas that the market really, really needs help with right now. And I think it's up to the vendor ecosystem at large, but of course Accedo as well to help with that.
Curious your thoughts on this idea of we want to be a media company wanting to stating they want to be a technology company. And I'll just mention I heard it at Float Left, and I heard it as a consultant for a few years working directly, which is very interesting with these media companies, that we want to be a technology company. Every single one of them realize we don't want to be the technology company. Curious your thoughts, and if you've heard that, and media companies becoming technology companies. Obviously, everyone's looking at Netflix and seeing how they're doing it, but they're kind of cut different than everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's absolutely, no issue having the technology chops in-house. But being a technology company means you need to also have an extremely robust product practice that can draw on trends across the entire industry and your competitors. And that's a pretty tall order. So I think you can be really strong with a feedback loop that's centered around your own service. But as we know, consumers on the same device platform are leveraging several different services. So kind of understanding how those are evolving is a difficult thing to kind of keep in touch with. So, I think vendors like ourselves who are providing technology services and building up these OTT services, the quote unquote unfair advantage we have is we work with hundreds of customers. So we're able to kind of synthesize those trends, those understandings into the service we provide for a single customer. So, I think being a technology company is very different to being a content company in that, I almost think about it as a matrix, right? If you look in one dimension, you've got the evolution of all the device platforms. So that's a particular dimension you need to keep in touch with. On the other dimension, you've got your back end and front end tech stack, another dimension you need to keep in touch with. And then on sort of a Z dimension, you have innovations, right? So what is the future of video going to look like? How are consumers going to leverage content in the future? Is it augmented reality? Is it VR? Is it voice assisted experiences? So now think about being a customer of ours who focuses on content and monetization. And now you've got to keep in lockstep with all these dimensions in addition to your bread and butter and day job, which is, acquiring and creating great content and understanding how to monetize that. So, I think not everyone can be a Netflix, and not everyone can kind of create the robustness of their type of technology team. So that's where we sort of fit in. And another thing I was going to say is there's obviously been some content companies who've taken it a step further, right? So they had aspirations to build technology in house, and then they also white labeled it. They're like, hey, well, we built it for ourselves. We could absolutely start providing this to other content companies, and the examples, Kirby. So again, I'm not about naming names, but many of those ventures will fail because it's also just detracting focus on your core mission. So those are at least my thoughts, and I think again, we are now in a time where you can aspire to be a technology company and a content company, but can you actually do that in a very cost efficient way? And I think overwhelmingly the answer is no from most of our customers.
Something that frustrates me with I've become jaded just as I got close to a lot of things. I saw a lot of things I wish I could unsee. But it was something that just bothers me with the media entertainment space in general. Maybe this is just me, but and that's fine. But I feel like the industry doesn't want to, and I'm speaking more on behalf of media companies to media companies. Everyone's very secretive about what they're doing. Like, we're building streaming video applications. Some of them are subscription based. Some of them are ad supported. Like, we're not building rocket ships or solving cancer here. Like, why are we so tight on, like, why do we not work with each other in a way that's not giving trade secrets or giving away IP that makes a better industry? And part of this, guys, is that my friends are a lot of times product people at these companies that they're like, we're trying to launch this app, but we have no idea what we should be doing. Best practice, like, sure, maybe we have people that can build it, or sure, maybe we can find somebody that we can bring on as a consultant to build it, but we don't understand best practices. Or why can I not learn about how to do this certain type of registration link or code or whatever it is? Like, why is there no like hub or anything for the industry kind of telling us all kind of what the best practices and standards should be? And many times they've asked for, I won't give any company names here, but they've asked for introductions directly to their product peers at other media orgs. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. I shouldn't be the conduit for how the industry learns from each other. And you mentioned it, Mrugesh, but just all the work you've done, all the best practices you do, it's so valuable. And I know you guys do blogs. I don't know the blogs intimately, but dude, you guys could be that. The industry lacks it for sure. And I mean, to the point, like, everyone chases Netflix, but at the same time, they want to hold what they're doing as secrets. Like, Netflix has a tech blog showing what they're doing. They're disclosing their secrets. It's crazy. So tight-lipped. But what everybody aspires to is kind of giving out their little secrets on a tech blog.
Absolutely. And if your concern is about, protecting intellectual property, again, back to the idea that tech stacks are evolving every 2 to 3 years in our industry. I mean, that's how long your IP is good for, right? 2 to 3 years. So, you're having to kind of reinvent, refactor, if we're talking the language of programmers, very, very frequently. So yeah, the idea of kind of learning how best to evolve this is something that should be a shared practice. And it was actually great, being at IBC a few weeks ago. It shows like that kind of generate that type of collaboration, not just between the content providers, but we talked about kind of mutual respect with Float Left, even amongst the vendors, right? Just understanding the trends, the themes, the discussions customers want to have, and how we can mutually solve that. The pie is big enough for everyone. Everyone can eat at the table
100%.
together. So it's about kind of driving each other to those successes.
And where I am, just everything I'm doing, like I want to educate, I want to inform, I want to challenge, and ultimately make this the best industry it possibly can be. It's like everything I'm doing has that mission in mind. That's just where I'm at in my little journey.
Really interesting conversation there. Appreciate some of the perspectives. You guys definitely have good insights on both sides of the field. Let's chat a little bit here. One thing we talked about is obviously that there's a lot of silos in the media industry, but one thing I think both of you are probably very keen or very aware of is just you've had a lot of conversations with C-suites over the years. What do you think that most of the people in the industry are just not well poised to handle that is coming? You guys talked a little bit about how tech stacks need to adopt or evolve, but what is some of the stuff that's coming that we need to kind of start learning to pivot around?
Yeah, I think overwhelmingly, we have gone from a pre-pandemic growth at all costs phase to now a cost efficiency phase, and that all sounds normal, right? Every industry that matures needs to go through that. But you can state it and it sounds normal. How you actually pull it off is a whole different ballgame. So again, coming back to IBC, so many of my conversations with current customers and prospects revolved around how does one actually achieve both quality, a great user experience, and do this very, very cost efficiently. You've seen Netflix do some of the restructuring. You've seen them add hybrid monetization models, and then you've seen the industry follow suit. But if you're going to make all of these wholesale changes on the tech stack and add all these new use cases for your consumers, in the current economic climate, the big $1 trillion, $1 billion, $1 million question is how do you do this cost efficiently? So we're trying to assist with this in sort of three key areas. Right. So firstly, it's around people. We have traditionally, been seen as a premium vendor in the space. And I think that's been a great label to have because we deliver premium quality services and products to our customers. So that's not going to change. But if customers are demanding more and more cost efficiency, one of the ways we can solve this through is people. So in every region we operate in globally, we have local presence. So if we think of North America, we've got great team members in Canada and the United States and Mexico, and they can provide support to our customers. They can collaborate. They can be in person with our customers, and that's fantastic. And we want to preserve that and kind of have this core nucleus in the region. But we are starting to more actively also create nearshore and offshore center of excellences that augment these teams, and then we can provide those cost savings back to the customer. So, that's a very tactical and kind of easy way to pull off. But there are two other areas that are much more strategic and nuanced and difficult to pull off, but where we have invested heavily. Technology, right? So if we've been at this game for such a long time, and I mean application development, but I also mean working with the entire video ecosystem of partners who do everything from encoding to content management to analytics to monetization, we must have got more efficient along this path, right? So those efficiencies, whether it's integrations, whether it's our underlying application frameworks, we talked briefly about kind of pooling knowledge together to create economies of scale. We have taken a very active initiative to pull this all together in terms of what we've done over the last decade or so into evolving our application frameworks, evolving our integrations with partners, such that the jump off point before we start any project is significantly more mature than we have in the past. Again, once we have that jump off point, those are cost savings we can provide to our customers. And then finally, I think most excitingly is the idea of managed services, right? So we're actively going to customers, and this is very much resonating, where they say, hey, look, could you just come in as an OTT consultant, an OTT advisor, evaluate, audit our entire tech stack and processes and the way we do product management, and tell us how you could refine this, be more efficient, and possibly are there pieces you can take over, and in some cases, can you just take the whole shebang over, because you can provide this at a much more efficient clip. So all three of those things, I think, are playing to what our customers want to hear and need to hear. And but back to your question, I think long story short, it really is around driving cost efficiency that everyone wants to talk about right now. But if you've been doing this and building your chiefdoms internally, it's very hard to repivot and rethink an internal strategy to pull that off. So I think the way you do it is, firstly, just having firms like ourselves come in, really audit everything you're doing in a very unbiased way, and then once we have those recommendations in place, we can slowly but surely step in to provide you those efficiencies while maintaining quality, while adding more of a data-driven loop with your users, and all the nuances that you see with services like Netflix.
Yeah, everything you said is just so important. I laughed when a year and a half, 2 years ago, the industry kind of shifted to this. Profitability is important. Like, as a bootstrap founder, guys, like, man, this is 101. This is like day one stuff. But these are much bigger, larger enterprises, publicly traded. It's a whole different ballgame. But profitability is so important. Like, I'm sure we all know the same media company from like years ago. I think they've changed it, but like at one point they had eight networks running on 8 different tech stacks, all using different vendors on the front and back end. And I mean, how incredibly inefficient is that? And I'm working on this concept right now on the streaming wars. And what I'm doing right now is I'm happy to share kind of what we're working on. What I think is cool is there's a lot of great different publications out there, but like, we're legit like in the industry, writing about the industry. We're not just a great team just covering it from a distance. Like, we're neck deep in it. And an idea, and if somebody wants to run with this before we do, that's cool. It's all about the better industry. Is I would love to do a cost comparison on the cost of a company launching a direct-to-consumer service with kind of what the old cost in the old world was. And obviously, they're two they're differing worlds. Like, one, you're just a content supplier, kind of wholesaling your content to just different MVPDs, and one, you're trying to establish that direct-to-consumer relationship. Point is, and we're talking about cost and profitability, is like, dude, it is so expensive to launch one of these services. And I'm not just talking about like what I'm familiar with, what you're familiar with, and like, I know what it costs more or less to build an app per platform, like custom, bespoke, all that. But like, that's a fraction of the cost. I mean, content's a content. Content was always expensive, whether you're creating it or licensing it. There's the back-end infrastructure. There's the call center. There's the support lines. There's the marketing. It's so expensive to stand these things up. And what also too is, once they're launching, running, humming along, is like also the customer acquisition cost. Like, if these customers come in off an app platform, like, well, then the app platform is going to get a percentage of that sub too. Like, these are crazy expensive businesses to operate. Like, every cent should matter. It's wild. And so I love to kind of compare what those two worlds look like. But here, back to like not sharing data. I don't know if there's data I can pull what kind of that looked like in the old world. I'm familiar with the new world, but.
Yeah, and we're in the confines of a individual customer, we're actively doing this kind of comparison for them if they're willing to provide us the data, right? And I think in the last 18 months, customers have been much more willing to share what their underlying operation costs are, technology costs, because they want to know what's out there, right? And it's a case of, if you can be transparent, we can help you solve your problems. And we've already had a couple of fantastic examples where, just recently, an operator in Canada who we work with extensively, They had us come in, evaluate all of their operation teams, right? So everything from QA to design to product to backend development, and asked us to sort of recommend both from a people perspective, but also from a tech stack perspective, where could they gain more efficiencies? And when we provided our recommendations, we didn't say it in the guise of, hey, Accedo can provide these services as replacements at a lower cost. It was, hey, anyone can provide this. If you're sort of looking for solutions, and that led to some new business for us, because they realized there were pieces of that puzzle that were immediately obvious, and would result in 2 or 3x cost savings versus the way they were doing it today. But you don't know what you don't know, right? So as a customer, you got to kind of put yourself out there. There's a reason we have NDAs, and with transparency is going to come great solutions from vendors. There are many things we have not solved for because we don't know they need solving for.
I think Evan Shapiro is probably one of the most vocal around this sort of topic, where it's basically, we see all these articles saying viewership is up 200%, but it's 200% from what? No one really knows exactly what we're kind of having as a baseline. So it's always interesting to see that thought.
On behalf of Evan, I'd be doing him a disservice if I didn't say it's Shapiro.
Shapiro. Thank you.
Also, on the subject of Evan, congratulations, Kirby. I know you're part of that very short list of industry folks who have been recognized as kind of the top 5 voices. So you're in great company with Evan and Alan and a couple other people. So well done.
Appreciate it. And for those not familiar, it's I find it humorous. So this was a top 5 list that was published on the Streaming Wars, which is what I operate. I joke and that I was the last on the list, but we just last week we lit up a new column, and that's the way we're framing a lot of the content, is in the form of columns and personalities, and kind of like think of them as like when I'm designing with my team, when I'm designing these little thumbnails for the columns, I kind of think of them as Netflix tiles, and that's the way we're approaching the content, is like kind of personalities and people behind just these written words. But we lit up one called he's very much in the industry, I think something like 25 years or so. But all we know about him, I know who he is, but everybody else knows about him. He's a streaming madman. And so he put out this list of his top 5 industry experts. And I made the list. I'm number 5. Evan's number 1. Don't know if it's in order or not. That's fine. And his list I would agree with too. Maybe not me though. But yeah, that column's blown up. I think this guy's more popular than I am now. So that's good. And a lot of theories, I guess, going around who this guy is. And yeah, it's cool. It's fun.
Yeah, congrats. And then, I mean, the idea that there are sort of industry news and trends connoisseurs, right? I mean, it's also important for people to quickly understand who the sort of go-to sources are to kind of stay in touch with the evolution. And also what I think is inspiring and kind of speaks to what you said before is I see a lot of collaboration between all of you, right? So you clearly are all competitive in some form or fashion, but the fact that you're actually collaborating with each other is exactly the kind of message we need to give to the industry at large. Vendors should be doing that. Content partners should be doing that. That's how to take the industry forward.
100%. I want to just chime in and say, kind of as a call to action or words of wisdom for the media folks, the media companies, is that, I mean, Evan's competing with Warner Media. Evan's competing with Paramount. I'm competing with Pluto. Like, and what I mean by that is like attention. Like a lot of times, like media companies are competing with other media companies. Like you're competing with everything that attracts my attention away from what you have, whether it's social media, gaming, basketball. Everything competes with each other. Like the industries don't even matter so much anymore. It's like there's no premium video, social video, user generated. It's like if it competes for my attention, we are all competing. And I think companies should have that in mind when building out their products.
Absolutely. One of the things that I've appreciated with the Streaming Wars, by the way, you've obviously picked up on a couple of our announcements, right? We had an announcement with our kind of next phase of our partnership with Hallmark. In the summer, we talked a little bit about our Olympics launch with the Canadian Broadcast Corporation. The fact that you're highlighting a lot of customer-centric stories, I think is important, right? I see a lot of macro-level analysis talking about general trends in the industry and how things are moving forward, but spotlighting how real customers are solving user experience and content aspects, I think is important, right? Those kind of in-depth case studies is where we like to sort of highlight our work, right? We have talked about macro level trends, but the fact like a publication like yourself is also being very customer centric, I think is fantastic.
I appreciate that very much. And back to what I said about what's important to me. I mentioned business strategy, but also product marketing. Like, I'm a product guy, I'm a marketing guy. And I had this idea for a Streaming Wars podcast back in 2019, like right not long after I launched the newsletter. And you'll read analysis on what's happening in the industry, and you'll hear about Reed Hastings said this, and Ted Sarandos said that, and David Zaslav is doing this. And these people are obviously important, very big deals. But that's all we're hearing about. Like, who is the director of engineering at Netflix? Who is the VP of product at Warner Brothers Discovery? Like, why aren't we hearing from these people? And so part of what I wanted to do with this Streaming Wars podcast that is still coming. It's been delayed quite a bit, but like, my idea was I want to pull these people out that are tactically doing stuff in the nitty gritty, that are like heads down in the trenches, like actually banging out, turning out these products, because I want to hear about their stories. I want to hear what a day looks like. I want to know how they got into space. I want to highlight these individuals, because back to I said my friends are the people, the product people at these orgs. Like, I want to hang out with my buddies. I want to highlight them and my peers in the industry, and not just for the industry to only hear about these figureheads. Like, the industry should know about people that are creating these products as well. And that goes for all the vendors they're working with as well. So yeah, happy to pull stories that you guys are working on and doing cool stuff. Like, that's what, again, I'm here for the industry, figuring out the business model, but I'm here for everybody.
Another thing, Kirby, that I like and appreciate is, your very authentic self, right? And you're obviously having a lot of fun with this, right? I'm not reading some AI generated script often when you're posting stuff, and you obviously have this run OTT burgeoning rap career that lightens things up and keeps things fun. I'm going to put you in the spot right now, and absolutely no issue if you don't take me up on this. But I can't have you on the podcast and not ask you to spit some bars. So if you want to indulge, go ahead. If you want to say another day, all good as well.
I will politely decline your request. Save that for another day. So, I used to be kind of decent at freestyling, and by freestyle, I mean like what you're talking about, impromptu. I don't know what I'm going to say it. Like, freestyle these days, like, literally means I wrote something, and when I think freestyle, it's off the top. I no longer have the muscle memory. It's not riding a bike, but I'll do it for another day. And I want to spin this up soon, and I might give you guys a shout out, but I will give you guys, I know this is audio, I will give you an exclusive on something that's not really been seen. So the date on this newspaper is February 16th, 2003. This is me on the front page of the accent section of the Columbus Dispatch newspaper. Battle rapping.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I used to rap a long time ago. Actually, my first business was a record label I started in high school, and there's a whole cool story that incorporates that and how I even got into doing the UX stuff. But this kind of something I always had in the bag. And then I was putting out these posts, just kind of testing the Instagram or the LinkedIn algorithm, just having fun with it. At this point in my life, I'm just here to have fun. And I would put on my LinkedIn posts, like, mostly like recapping, when I do a newsletter recap, I would put at the bottom, like, if this gets 200 likes, I'll wrap next week's version, thinking it's the win-win. If I don't have to, if I get 200 likes, cool, I don't have to wrap it. I don't have to put in that work. If it does, cool, no problem. It'll be fun and creative. And it's never got 200 likes still to this day. LinkedIn. But I decided one day, you know what? I'm just going to do it. And everyone's being smart and rightfully so on LinkedIn. You know what? Let me just come in with some raps. Why not? So that's how that got started. It was like 2 days after NAB. I was a little fired up, ready to go. And like, I don't need 200 likes. Let's just get back in it. Which, by the way, like, the state of the end, like, trying to rap about the industry. It's not a whole lot of words. It's kind of bundle and fast. And I did what song? I think I rapped bundle 23 times, but like I've been doing stuff outside of the industry, and there's so much words used outside of media.
And we have so many acronyms, so yeah, you're not going to have a shortage of materials for your bars. But yeah, I mean, you're obviously an OTT OG, but also good to know now that you're a hip hop OG. So
yep, 100%, yeah.
Awesome. It's safe to say that you've worn a lot of hats over the years. That's pretty funny. We're getting close to the end here, but I'd be remiss if I didn't get to ask you a little bit of just general SEO questions. I mean, as an SEO marketing firm in 4320, I got to have just a couple questions on just general discoverability and whatnot. You talked about how just some of these social media platforms are also competitors in a way. How do you, I guess, work with content providers or just other businesses in leveraging both like the OS level advertising or even just social media, which are technically competitors in a way, but still as ways to funnel, I guess, viewership back to the main platforms?
So I just want to call out that right now with 4320, we're primarily we're pretty much exclusively working with the B2B side of things. So less so with media companies. We have done that work, and it's really interesting. Like you can basically like a really big SEO problem for media companies and companies operating streaming services. You'll go put in the name of a show. And I guarantee you, like any media company listening to this that's big enough where they're kind of distributed in a lot of places, I promise you that probably 19 out of 20 times Amazon's outranking you for your own stuff. And that's what media companies need to figure out is I mean, at the end of the day, the wholesale guys don't care where you sign up, but like there is a subset of the direct to consumer folks that, well, they want you to sign up directly through them and not through Amazon channels or Roku channel. And that's a thing we see a lot. And there's a lot of just things we've in just our previous work and research. There's nobody's really kind of thinking about that or optimizing for that. Like you have the IP, you have the content, you're being outranked, outspended too. It's kind of hard to outspend Amazon, but I mean that's the easy one you should be looking at is if you're getting outranked on your own stuff.
I think one final thing from my side, right? We've obviously had a volatile period for the industry over the last 24 months. Let's just put it that way. But how do you feel about the next 5 years, right? Like, where's your optimistic meter on the industry and how things are going to move forward? You got a lot of people, including some of your peers, who talk about doom and gloom, and obviously we're seeing tons of layoffs across the media industries. My personal view is this is a micro moment, right? Every industry has to go through these adjustments before the skies kind of open up again. But yeah, and I know inherently you're a half glass full kind of guy, but you now have spent a ton of time through 4320 and the streaming wars analyzing the industry. So from a data perspective, kind of where do you see things in a few years?
So we're actually, this is a perfect lead into, actually probably one of the next articles the streaming wars will be putting out is called something like, I don't know what it's called, but I think the working title right now is like, it's called Y'all Ready for a Reset? Just kind of looking at like, dude, we had a huge boom. We had a huge bubble. We're one of the only industries like striving in a very uncomfortable time for everybody. And everybody's kind of just set their expectations based on that, just that will perpetually keep increasing. And the ship's been righted. I've talked to a lot of companies, and just kind of if you look at like the numbers they're pulling in, if you kind of wipe away like those peak COVID years, like they're growing steadily. The problem is they've projected based off the boom, and that's where we're at, and that's what we're seeing with a lot of the craziness going on with the industry. So I think we're all going to be okay, but this is a large thing we got to get through. And that just speaking holistically about the industry, media stuff like yeah, I mean, what's tough for the media, for the direct to consumer side of things, and what I didn't love personally when I was like really close to these companies consulting is external factors. The largest one for me, like a product guy and like whatever else, just a product guy is Wall Street And so much of a company's product roadmap and decision making and strategy is around Wall Street, which it just butt heads with like me. And I think long-term strategy, I think year out strategy, I don't think like quarter strategy. And that's a whole thing that just that's a disadvantage in some way with these companies, and they're all publicly traded at this point, the major ones. But I would say for the smaller streaming services, this is your advantage. You're privately owned. You could do whatever you want. You're not beholden to anything else. Like, it's your own roadmap, and that's powerful. So embrace that.
Thank you both for joining, and thank you to everyone for listening. If you want to read more about what Kirby's talking about, we'll throw a link to the Streaming Wars in the description of this episode. That's all for the episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions or you'd like to reach out, you can feel free to send us an email at playback.podcast@accedo.tv or send me a message on LinkedIn. Thanks again to Kirby for joining. Really appreciate the conversation. And again, we will have a link to the streamingwars.tv in the description of this episode. And if you like the episode, please feel free to like and subscribe or follow if you're on any of the major podcast platforms. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.